Everyone, I hope everyone had a awesome afternoon and an awesome evening. And we are coming up on chapter 35 tonight. But first we are going to start with I'm going to adjust the camera real quick for y'all. There we go. As always, we are going to start with today's prayer. And it is, when I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. Psalms 56:3. When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you. That is so awesome. Very little words, but speaks so much. Oh, let's give her back her cup. I knocked her cup out of her hand. Put that back on her hand there. Oh, better not. All right. Hello everyone. Thank you for coming in. Hello Ashley, how are you? I am going to get comfortable. I get my drink. Get comfortable. I hope you had a great day, and yes, you did. I'm so happy to see you here tonight. All right. Let me get all comfy. Comfy. All right, chapter starting now, and we are coming to the end, and tonight's read is chapter 35. And boy, am I looking forward to this one. Libby woke Saturday morning to discover Philip asleep beside her. She blinked, thinking he might be an illusion, and then remembered that she had lost Amy Jo to Peter's family. Philip had been her comfort. She doubted she could have made it through the night without him. In her grief, she actually asked him not to leave her. Friday had been one of the lowest points in her life. Libby liked being independent. From the time of her mother's death, she prided herself on her ability to deal with the blows life tossed her. She was strong, capable, and resourceful. But yesterday, she badly needed Philip. She had clung to him, unable to face the night alone. How easy it would have been for him to make love to her, but he hadn't. All he had done was hold her close and whisper reassurances. Although Dr. Philip Stone enjoyed his hospital reputation of having a stone of heart, that was a misnomer. He was actually tender, compassionate, and kind. Their romance wasn't based on sexual attraction, although that was definitely there. Oh yes, it was present and accounted for in spades, but tightly controlled on both sides. Neither one was willing to allow hormones to rule their actions. The pain of broken relationships had left scar tissue on his heart and on hers. Both had been wary of getting involved again, cautious, perhaps overly so. The draw she felt for Philip was beyond the physical. At one time, Philip had been trapped into thinking work was the solution to all of life's issues. Like her, his profession fed his ego and allowed him to bury his problems behind a protective wall. But Philip had broken free of his workaholic tendencies, and because he had, she felt the hope and confidence that she could too. Really, they were kindred spirits, alike in so many ways. Oh, good, I'm glad. I'm glad that you watched the replay. Yes, you have your homework then, your poem. He must have felt her scrutiny because his eyes slowly opened. Morning, he said, stretching his arms above his head and releasing a yawn. He tossed aside the sheets and surged upright. It seemed that only then did he remember the reason he had stayed the night. He sat on the edge of the mattress and turned back to look at her. How are you feeling? Passable. The pain wasn't nearly as raw as it had been the day before, but it was there, pressing hard against her chest, a heavy weight against her tender heart. For so long as Livy could remember, her cure what had been to keep busy, to work harder and longer, and ignore everything and everyone else. If she could occupy her mind with menial matters, then she wouldn't dwell on her troubles. This was how she survived following her mother's death, and how she had gotten through her divorce. Good. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. I'm sorry to rush out of here, but I took weekend duty for a friend, so I need to get to the hospital. While she would have rather he stayed, she accepted that he needed to go. She walked him to the door and resisted the urge to hug him for fear it would make their parting even more difficult for her. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome. He placed his hand at the base of her neck and brought her mouth to his, kissing her gently. Can I see you tonight? He asked. Would you like to go sailing? He had asked her the same thing the night before, thinking she was sure that being on the water would help her deal with her pain. Earlier, it seemed impossible that she would ever be able to leave the comfort of her condo. This morning, she felt more inclined. That would be perfect. I'll text you when I can. He hesitated as though it was difficult to leave her. Okay. She walked him to the elevator and he kissed her again, wrapping his arms around her and holding her tight and close. So close that for a moment it was almost difficult to breathe. Libby had a busy day. Robin stopped by shortly after Philip left and packed up Amy Jo's room for her. Lydia phoned twice just to make sure she was doing all right. Her family of friends surrounded her with love. Later that evening, and on Sunday too, Philip came and they sailed across Lake Washington. The wind buffeted her face, drying her tears as she did her best to hide the fact she was crying. Philip simply held her as she worked through her loss. Monday morning, Libby found Philip waiting for her outside Frankie and Johnny's. He draped his arm around her shoulders as they entered the gym. He seemed to have a hard time taking his eyes off her. If they had been any place else, she suspected, he might have kissed her. Robin was waiting for her inside the locker room. "I wasn't sure you'd show," she said, watching Libby closely. Libby sat on the bench and looked up at her friend. "The way I figure, I could stay home and feel sorry for myself or get on with my life. I've decided to move forward. It won't be easy, but Libby would ignore the hole in her heart and do her best to forget this abrupt and unwelcome twist in the storyline that she had conjured for herself. It was, it was if the universe had intervened and put the kibosh on her new risk-taking, joy-seeking self. "Anything I could do?" Robin asked. "Not really, but thanks for offering. What are your plans for the day?" Libby had given the matter some thought. "After the gym, I'm going to talk to Ava about this adoption. I want to make sure, as Amy Jo's biological mother, she can have a role in the baby's life later, even if she doesn't think she wants that now. My fear is that she'll change her mind at some point. Also, I thought I'd contact Peter's family and offer them all the baby furniture I purchased. They're going to need it." "They should pay for it," Robin insisted. Libby had briefly considered that. It wasn't like she could afford it. "No, it'll be my gift to them. They aren't wealthy people, and they're already picking up the attorney costs for the adoption and making big changes in their lives for Grace." She stumbled over Amy Jo's new name. Robin shook her head. "You have a generous heart, Libby." Libby wasn't convinced it was generosity as much as self-preservation. She didn't want the baby furniture at the condo any longer than necessary. It was a constant reminder to her of all her loss. "Don't you have a second appointment this afternoon with those friends of the Buckleys?" Robin asked. "I do. At 3, Libby was scheduled to meet with the Narquist family regarding trust funds they wish to set up for their grandchildren and their college education. After her initial contact with them, Libby got the impression this could be the beginning of a long and fruitful relationship. She certainly felt that way with the Buckleys. Following her meeting, Libby stopped off at a good yarn. After everything Philip had done for her over the past few days, she wanted to find a special way to thank him. She decided to knit him a sweater. They met for dinner on the waterfront that night. Philip was full of stories from the hospital. She knew he was looking to distract and entertain her. They walked hand in hand along the piers and decided to ride the ferry over to Bainbridge Island for no better reason than to buy a latte and ride back. All the time she had lived in Seattle, Libby had never taken a ferry for pleasure, and Philip confessed that he hadn't either. Tuesday morning at the gym, Libby stepped onto the treadmill and started her workout. She ran faster and longer than she usually did, struggling not to think about Amy Jo. She accepted that the Armstrongs had a claim on the baby, and it was their son's child, but that didn't make it any easier to let her go. It was almost 11 by the time Libby stopped by the office read over the adoption paperwork before driving over to Ava's to review everything. She purposely chose a time when Darlene Carmichael would be away from the house. The discussion was one she wanted to have without Ava's grandmother. Ava would do anything to appease her grandmother, and Libby wanted to take that additional pressure off her. Good evening, Paula. That's okay. Ava sat on the front porch steps waiting for her. She stood when Libby parked the car at the curb in front of the house and ran to her. Libby hugged her. "How's it going?" she asked, tucking her arm around the girl's waist as they walked down the cracked sidewalk toward the house. "I'm feeling better every day." Libby was extremely proud of Ava. "I knew you would. Peter and I talked. He told me how sorry he was, that he would have helped me if he had known. Only I don't know what he could have done. He wanted to tell me his parents will love the baby." She raised questioning eyes to Libby, as if seeking her approval. "They will be good parents to Grace," Libby said, brushing the hair from Ava's forehead in order to get a better look at the girl's eyes. She nearly stumbled over the words, but she was determined to be positive for Ava's sake. I wanted you to adopt her." Ava frowned as though unsure of what to think. Libby swallowed against the tightness that gripped her throat. "I would have loved nothing better, but sometimes life throws us a curveball, and we have to deal with it the best we can." Ava lowered her head. "What's important to me is that your rights regarding your daughter are clearly spelled out." I don't understand." "Let's sit down and talk this out," Libby suggested. The two of them sat on the front step. The concrete slab was narrow, so their hips pressed tightly against each other's. "Remember when I explained to you about an open adoption?" Ava nodded. "Yes, but I think it might be easier not to see the baby again, ever." Libby wouldn't discount that. "The thing is, Ava, Grace is going to be living right next door to you. Of course, Peter and his family could move one day, but until then, you won't be able to avoid seeing her." Libby suspected the family already had plans to make a change. For one thing, they would need a bigger house now that they were enlarging their family. "I guess you're right. You've already lost your mother," Libby reminded her. "I don't want you to look back someday and regret that you gave up your child without any provisions to be a part of her life." Ava considered Libby's words, a thoughtful look scrunching her forehead. "This will allow me the chance to see my baby, if that's what I want later?" "Exactly." "Then I think an open adoption would be best, if you do too." "I do. I'll contact the attorney as soon as I get back to the office and make sure everything is drawn up so you have that option. Before you sign anything, I want you to read it. Understand?" Again, Ava nodded. "Okay." Libby hugged her briefly. "I'm going to be at the yarn store later this afternoon. Will you be there?" The teen broke into a wide grin and nodded. "Casey asked me to come to the shop today, and I told her I would, after I saw you. I thought I would knit myself a vest for school. I start classes on Monday." What color? I like purple, Ava said. Bright, bright purple. Purple is one of my favorite colors, too. I'm going because I decided to knit Dr. Stone a sweater. In purple? Libby laughed. If that's what he wants. I'm going to let him decide on the pattern and the yarn. Cool. You must really like him. I do. They spoke for several minutes, and then Libby had to go. I'll see you later this afternoon, she promised. Ava nodded excitedly. Once more, Libby marveled at how resilient this teenager was. Though she understood that Ava was far too young to fully appreciate what she was going through. That was why Libby found it important to protect Ava's interests in regard to her baby. Libby returned to her office. She had a long phone conversation with the Armstrong's attorney. Within minutes of hanging up, Marlene Armstrong phoned to thank her for her offer of the baby furniture. For the rest of the afternoon, Libby worked on the Buckley account and also on the trust funds for the Nequas. After her meeting with them, Lois and Jameson had given Libby a retainer. They were both in their mid-60s, retired, and seriously looking at their financial future. As much as possible, they were hoping to protect their assets and put something away for their children and grandchildren. Libby had proposed several options. Philip stopped by her condo, and she had fixed a Cobb salad for dinner. Actually, they made it together, chopping and assembling the ingredients next to each other. Philip brought along a bottle of Merlot, which he definitely opened and poured while she set the table. He helped her with a few dishes afterwards. I've decided to knit you a sweater, Libby said, as Philip dried the frying pan she used for the bacon and set it on the stovetop. But if I'm going to put that much work and effort into this project, I want to be sure you're going to like the pattern. Margaret had been of the opinion that Libby shouldn't even consider such a time-consuming project without a ring on her finger. That's cute. When a woman decided to knit a man a sweater, the relationship had to be serious. Libby was serious about Philip, and growing more so with every passing day. Knitting a sweater for him felt right. Philip reached for his wine glass. I don't have to go back to the yarn store, do I? Would that be such a sacrifice? She looked up at him and smiled. Or as close as she could get. No, I guess not. He didn't look or sound convinced. It would help if you chose the yarn too. Philip folded the dishcloth and set it aside. I hate to tell you this, but I know next to nothing about yarn. The color, sweetheart. I know you're partial to blue. I am, he frowned, bunching his brows together in a single jagged line. How'd you know that? You're not serious, are you? Nearly all your shirts are blue. They are? He seemed shocked. Yes, and the color goes very nicely with your eyes. He grinned, accepting the compliment with ease. Lots of women tell me so. She jabbed at his arm and pretended to be hurt. Come over here and sit down with me, and we can look through a few patterns. He dutifully followed Libby into the living room. She brought out the pattern book she had bought and handed it to Philip. It took him all of 5 minutes to choose a V-neck sweater. How about this sweater? You're knitting for me. Yes. She looked up and blinked at him several times, flirting outrageously. She had felt better when she was with Philip, and the ache in her heart hurt less when he was at her side, and for a while she was able to forget. It seems to me knitting a sweater involves a lot of work. It's undertaking. Margaret actually suggested I have an engagement ring on my finger before I purchase the yarn. It's an investment, you know. The ring or the yarn, he asked, and his eyes danced with merriment. She smiled. Both, actually. Philip exhaled as though giving the matter some serious consideration. It's a little soon for you to think about dragging me to the altar, don't you think? Drag you to the altar? Oh, honestly, that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever said. Okay, okay. I just want to be sure we understand each other. Is this sweater your way of saying our relationship shows promise? He cocked his eyebrows with the question. Well, she murmured, hesitating. Truth be told, I could easily see the two of us making a life together. We aren't kids. We both know what we want in life, right? Philip responded with an agreeable nod. I definitely know what I want. She waited for him to continue, and when he hesitated, well, don't keep me in suspense. Smiling, he gathered her into his arms. It should be obvious by now, Libby Morgan. I want you. And that takes us to chapter 36. Let's see, I think how many chapters do we have left? Oh, not very many. We only have like 4 chapters left. So we will be finished real soon. 4 chapters to go, and they are pretty long for being the end of the book, but they're sure going to tell us whether Philip and Libby will get married. And I do want to thank all of you for coming in and listening to Starting Now by Debbie McComber. I hope you all have a good evening. Good night, sleep tight, stay positive.